I want to go through some arguments I made on a /r antinatalism subreddit about a book that says that parents are narcissistic inherently, and my commentary would just kind of expand it to an ad absurdio by saying, let's go through the points. A, parents are narcissists because they put themselves first. That's the point from the subreddit. And then B, this implies putting others first because in some sense parents are expecting the children to adhere naively to their whims, and this is a kind of putting others first. So yeah. And then C, putting others first still puts someone first. So let's say the narcissism was bad, but then you took the good old fashioned moral advice that you should serve others, and then we say that this then implies also something similar in terms of the whole being something served like the narcissist is, except it's a different emotional valence when you do it in a moral capacity instead of something that is morally not liked. But okay, point D. Those coming first as a whole would then also be narcissists in the same way. And then point E, the final one. Therefore, the social and obligation in brackets does not precede itself, since also the self is not other first, but is in the social demands the same. Okay, so that's the first argument. Argument two is that one's experience being worse does not imply the paradigm of experience wholesale needs to be ontologically bad entirely, considering fentanyl hangs exist in a way that is at peace while at peace. And so the story there is that not all moments of life are undignified in a way that falls prey to antinatalist arguments. As well, I would say, since protocells can happen again, it implies that even if you did try to wipe out life, chances are it would happen again. Okay, so my third argument, other people are selves that are presently disconnected. That means that you don't see from their eyes you are where you are, but they are currently also carrying on. And all selves come from the same place but live in different segments as separate lives. Therefore, self extension is different from other extension. That means that the extent to which you are a self is non dually reflected in everything in a way that makes that other people aren't as other in terms of inheriting from a common state space and not coming difference first in the sense that would be implied by correlationist thoughts. So, the next sentence is in this sense, parenthood without an attachment, such as being born in a test tube or a system that keeps fetuses developing and then to be born without parents, such as in the case where it is an AI generated genetics, then the occasion of having parents and having been determined by them falls away, since AI would be an extension of state causality or the statefulness of the state space just merely, if not a statism, and actually being born that way would imply that then that the world as such is responsible for self extending into you as you, and that what then applies as blamable does not inherit from morality already, since you would not belong to a social group necessarily, since you'd be something born by matter alone, and God would also still be responsible, or the universe, so to say, for this as its desire already, self fulfilling already, in a way where no causality is separated or segregated by praise and blame boundaries or moral responsibility, besides the case of ontology, where it is self causality, which is different from a decision in decided terms already. Yeah. Then in brackets, laws of physics as the instantiated version of the latter already versus contingency of absolute decision making for absolute differences. I think the takeaway from the third argument in some sense is that being is responsible for itself, but that implies that morality is secondary to this first responsibility, and that being can contradict itself within its own space to do so, as the limit, in some sense, to itself from without that is not from without by another, so to say. The necessary integral form has more freedom than the moral form, and it implies still that the moral form is secondary to the integral form, but is one of its aspects, but as an aspect is not totalizing of all other aspects, in the same way how people in different countries can have different morality, but seeing as they've lived that way isolatedly, the risks of it is not the same as in the case of having epistemic differences. That is, you can have a different personality for what is right and wrong, and it would be that you could play that role with others and have others play into that, and it would be real in that sense, except for someone elsewhere can play a different game, and these two games don't cancel each other out when they aren't proximal and fighting in some sense, close to each other. Yeah, okay, argument four, the last one. Parenthood, in its social sense, as having human species being cultural aspects about it that relates to the norms and valences of reproduction of self with another self, as a thing of the ego ideal and relational particulars that go into understanding parenthood. In that sense, the ability to become a parent when not smitten with the way humans understand it could itself be more open than the norms of mere overdetermination, parenthood as a fascism, that is, while not strong enough to resist. So, yeah, there's other ways for creatures to be reproducing that does not have to suffer the same social strictures and parenthood, narratives that people do, because it could be psychologically structured in a way that is otherwise, and that this would perhaps be more dignifying. Yeah.